list over and over and over again. Kids that have epilepsy. There's so many people that have had great benefit, particularly from edible cannabis. People that have seizures. I mean, you could keep going on and on and on. It's an amazing plant. And to have that demonized because of some ridiculous propaganda from the 1930s that still somehow or another clung on in 2018. When you think about all the information we have now with the internet and the fact that cannabis is still Schedule 1, you have assholes like Jeff Sessions still saying things like good people don't smoke marijuana. Like, this is crazy talk.
It's crazy, but keep in mind, it was just about 100 years ago that alcohol was prohibited in the United States, and it took 13 years to reverse that. And that was alcohol. There's no drug more integrated into our culture than alcohol, and that took 13 years to reverse.
What was that like back then? That must have been madness when alcohol was illegal, when the cops would come in and jackbooted thugs would knock over gin mills and bust open kegs of whiskey and spill it all out. Like, what the fuck was that like?
It was disastrous, but I think what's interesting about that is it was a worthwhile experiment. To give them the benefit of the doubt, it was worthwhile to see, because on some sense, you could say that prohibition has a certain logic to it. You could say drugs cause problems, so if we just make all the drugs illegal, then maybe those problems will disappear. But it didn't work. The experiment failed, and there's nothing wrong with a failed experiment, but it's a problem if you keep repeating it over and over and over again for 100 years looking for a different result.
Right. And then go to other drugs and go, well, this one, let's try this one. Let's make this one illegal.
And it's a terrible PR situation for the police as well. If I were a police officer, I would be the biggest opponent of the war on drugs of anyone in the government, because when you think about why does the average person in New York City love a firefighter? They love firefighters, but they hate cops. Why is that? It's because of the drug war, because a firefighter isn't going to hurt you for something that wasn't really a crime to begin with, for some kind of victimless crime. A firefighter is just there to help you, to save you if you're in trouble. And the same would be true of police officers if it weren't for the drug war. Ideally, there's a little more complexity to it.
Sure, there's certainly more complexity when it comes to shootings and things along those lines. But I mean, the stop and frisk. I read something about stop and frisk in New York when they had that instituted. That most of it was drugs. Most of it was like catching people with marijuana.
Yeah,
which is just fucking insane. You just start. Hey, you look like you might be streetwise. Get over here.
And that's the way these laws have functioned from the very beginning. I mean, if you look at drug law in the UK, it tends to be very black and white. Something is legal or illegal. If it's legal, it can be sold in stores because it's legal. If it's illegal, it can't be sold anywhere. In the US, they've instead created this nebulous, far-reaching gray area where there's all sorts of things that are maybe illegal, kind of illegal, do it but don't get caught. And it's created an ability for the government to selectively prosecute people whenever they want, if they want.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be lessening. I mean, when you have someone like Jeff Sessions in office, it's very disturbing. But then Trump says things like he's very strong on states' rights to, pass marijuana laws and things along those lines. You're very incredulous.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose I am a bit incredulous when it comes to Trump doing anything good. But I
think if you told him that people love him more if he did things good, he would do things good.
That's probably true.
I think
if someone that he trusted said it, yeah.
I think that's his. I think we got to get somebody in deep. We got to get a mole in there. Got to get somebody who's good at back rubs.
Gets Ivanka on the podcast and get her high.
I don't think that'll help. I doubt it'll help. I mean, I don't know what is the thing that'll help. There's also the separation between the drug users and the policymakers.
Yes, and one thing that I am certain will help, and it's sort of tragic that this is the case, but it's capitalism. It's the corporatization of these drugs.
Yes.
Because with cannabis, when it was hippies and the counterculture having, marches down the streets of New York holding up 420 signs, it doesn't, I suppose, have all that much clout in the eyes of lawmakers. But when you have some guy from Yale Business School who's never smoked weed, who says, this is a serious business opportunity.
Yeah.
We're going to make it big, and gets investors, invests millions and millions of dollars into it, hires lobbyists, plays the game like a capitalist, then the laws do change. And I wish that weren't the case, but it is. And it's tragic for the people that did fight and did go to prison and did sacrifice, that then these business school guys come along and reap all of the benefits. But that's the way it works.
Yeah, that is the way it works, and that's okay. I mean, it's just a weird path. It's a weird path, but as long as we can get to legalization, I'm 100% for that path. I just think that might be the only way in this weird country. This country is so enamored with money. I mean, we're so enamored with money and profits, and even for dying people, even old people. Like Warren Buffett invested shit tons of money in warehouses to sell to grow cannabis in Colorado when the laws were passed. I mean, that guy's 150,000 years old. He's worth billions of dollars, and he's like, who gives a shit? I'm making more money now, and more and more and more. I mean, even when they're really old, they're massively motivated by profit.
Yes. And I think the same will be true for psychedelics, and will probably be true for all of these things, because you need to have lobbyists, and you need to have this sort of typical white-collar support to push things forward.
I agree. I don't see any other way around it right now. I mean, the real hope is that cannabis, not that it will get rid of capitalism, but that we'll figure out. It's hard to wear those things with glasses on, right?
Yes.
They're always talking about it. The glasses dig into your head. That cannabis not just cannabis, but cannabis will open the door to all these different substances that will allow people to gain a greater perspective. This is the ultimate goal, in my opinion, is to give people the opportunity to step outside the momentum of their lives and look at things with fresh eyes and make clear decisions. This is one of the best things that I think that drugs provide, is that these psychedelic drugs in particular provide an escape from the momentum of this life that you've created or that you've found yourself a part of. It's very difficult for people to stop behavior patterns, to stop and to just look at themselves objectively and sort of rethink, regroup, and reassess. And this is one of the best things about cannabis and about psilocybin and a lot of these other psychedelic drugs, is that it gives you this newfound perspective that allows you to reconsider things.
Yes, absolutely. And I think with, ketamine and the treatment of depression, it's a similar idea, because depressed people become used to these very ingrained patterns of thinking, and anything that can break you out of that can shake it up for a minute and maybe give you a different perspective, I think is inherently therapeutic.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think I'm hoping that what I see, and this is what I believe I see, is that we're changing our perceptions of it. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about marijuana, where we were talking about how you used to hide whether or not you did it from certain people. And now that group of people that you have to hide it from is smaller and smaller. And that it seems like everyone casually smokes marijuana now in our circles. There's so many people that do. There's a few that don't, sober people and whatever. But it's way more common, whereas 10, 15 years ago, this was something you hid. If you had a good job, if you had a family, this is not something you wanted people to know about.